very, very excited to welcome you to this webinar. This has been a labor of love for us, 5 on this call, plus a few others as well, discussing how cloud computing affects and can contribute towards financial inclusion. We particularly focused our conversation on Africa. That was where many of the geographies who raised the issue first come from, but we know that the issue impacts many geographies, not just Africa itself. So we hope that those of you who are dialing in from other continents and other parts of the world can join in the conversation as well. Firstly, let me introduce myself before I introduce our panelists. My name is Sarah Corley. I'm CEO of the Alliance of Digital Finance and Fintech Associations. And I'm delighted to be joined by 4 members of our working group as well today, who helped shape the recommendations and the wonderful paper that we produced. And we'll share a link to that paper for those of you that have not yet read it, so that then you'll be able to find all the detail in that particular paper. But first, let me introduce you to the panelists. So we have 4 experts with us today, able to share their practical skills and knowledge out there in the environments. We have João Gaspar, who is a founder of Paytech, president of the Fintech Association of Mozambique, and also board chair of Alliance of Digital Finance and Fintech Associations. We have Kagiso Dushabe. He is founder of Afronova Digital and director at Fintech Association of South Africa, FINASA, both of whom, FINASA and Mozambique, are our members of the Alliance of Digital Finance and Fintech Associations. And it was actually the 2 of them who came up with this idea in the first place. So we have to give them both huge amounts of credit for raising the issue as being a challenging one that fintechs are facing. Of course, we couldn't have a conversation about cloud computing without a cloud computing expert. So I'm really glad that we're joined by Alfred Mukudu. Alfred is the financial services go-to-market lead at Amazon Web Services. And also, we needed a practical example of why cloud computing was so important. And that is why we have really delighted that we've got Rachel Freeman, the Chief Growth Officer at Time, who will be sharing her experiences about building products and designing products on the cloud and how it has helped Time in their journey. We also really want to wish a couple of people who are not on the webinar with us, but they contributed tremendously to the report. So just wanting to sort of shout out to them, in particular to Rob Madziva, founder of Digital Mobile Africa, a board member at Alliance of Digital Finance and Fintech Associations, and also advisor to Digital Finance Practitioners Tanzania. We have a Kanamo Usoro, who is the senior cloud engineer and technical assistant to the deputy governor at the Central Bank of Nigeria. So it was really important for us to include regulation perspectives in our report as well. We have Oleg Zadalia, who is principal solutions consultant for fraud and identity at LexisNexis Risk Solutions, who is really important at helping us understand those risk issues, along with Matteo Jarin Cuvi, Global Manager for Partners and Media at the Association of Governance, Risk and Compliance. We also thank Jesse Karuga, who helped with the report, and to all the associations in Africa that helped fill in the survey and shared their valuable insights. I think I've got the thank yous and the credits out of the way, so I think let's jump in. First of all, to make sure we're all on the same page, I think, Alfred, maybe we can come to you and you can sort of help us all understand exactly what are the cloud services, what cloud is, what are the cloud services? It's something we find in the sky, what is cloud?
So as simply as possible, cloud is just the on-demand delivery of IT resources over the internet with pay-as-you-go pricing. So you can think of it in terms of, instead of buying, owning, maintaining, managing your own data centers, your own servers, your own storage, your networking, your power, all of that heavy lifting, that then gets managed by a cloud service provider or a vendor. And they can provide those services as well as any other managed services on an as needed basis. And you pay for only what you use.
Brilliant. And most of us will be familiar, right, what the cloud, I mean, we use it every day. I mean, can you give us, I'm thinking this webinar, for example, is being recorded on, and saved into the cloud. We obviously use cloud computing in many ways in our daily lives without even perhaps realizing it.
Absolutely, and it's embedded in a lot of the experience we have. So you gave a good example, right? Of this webinar, or if you think about your email inbox, you don't necessarily know what server it's hosted on and where that server is sitting. Chances are that server is not even in the country, but it works seamlessly. And so when you extend that into enterprises, corporations, communities, small businesses, individuals, people are just trying to figure out ways to be able to have those types of applications and IT experiences seamless, whilst the security of those applications, how they scale, how they're set up, is kind of abstracted and hidden from them.
Great, and we're going to unpick some of those challenges and issues as we go through this webinar. But I want to sort of take us back to the conversation that we had, and it was in 2023 now, about what the challenges of cloud computing, and particularly thinking about in financial, service providers. Why was this an issue that we actually investigated and wanted to learn more about in the first place? So Kagiso, maybe you can share some of your thoughts on, what you raised, with the AllianceDFA.
No, thank you, Sarah. I think for us, it's I think when you look at cloud computing, actually, and when you talk about challenges that FSPs are facing, and actually that made us investigate this issue. I think when you start talking about the differences between countries in terms of adoption and usage of cloud computing, we know that in many countries, there's a lot of regulatory challenges. You will find that there's a lot of restrictions or lack of regulation regulations, and that which is widespread across the continent. So we find that in different countries there's different adoption of cloud computing and its usage. And also, one of the things that we've identified as a challenge was that fintechs can't really scale and operate easily across multiple jurisdictions in the continent. And this is due to lots of restrictions, and some of them are regulatory, unfortunately. And we know that, for example, in Mozambique and Zambia and possibly Tanzania as well, there's few restrictions when it comes to data storages and where information is stored, especially when it comes to in the financial sector. Transactions, I know João can vouch to this. I know this because we have some operations in Mozambique that certain data cannot be stored in the cloud, right? And when you ask yourself, why is that so? There are some regulatory challenges along those areas. And also compliance with data privacy might be one of the key reasons why, some jurisdictions have or are not so, for lack of a better word, are not so welcoming cloud computing usage throughout the continent. And then one other challenge that we picked up was the misconception around the cost of how much does it cost, as compared to either on-site or even hybrid. So when someone talks about it, instead of keeping a big server in the in most of the time in the basement, sadly, as compared to using cloud computing, some people or some entities, especially in the financial sector, they struggle to understand the true cost of cloud computing, and with that comes the interoperability between cloud service providers, CSPs, for the lack of a better word. And what we've seen is that some fintechs, actually fintechs and other financial service providers, they have, call it a misconception about whether the vendors will lock them in regarding subscription. But as it was just mentioned now, it could be a pay-as-you-go type of model, which will work easily or could work easily for the service providers, FSPs. So, and I think in Africa, one of the biggest challenges is actually the infrastructure, right? And infrastructure talks about, let's say, availability of electricity. As we know, it's a major challenge. Like in South Africa, we've had load shedding. But touch wood, it doesn't happen over 150 days. I stand to be corrected, but we're doing great. Yeah. So, but anyway, we know that electricity is a challenge throughout the continent. So when you have cloud computing, if there is no electricity, that means that, well, you won't be able to connect, right? Another one that goes hand in hand with electricity is actually availability of data, connectivity, for lack of a better word. Are you able to connect the internet service providers providing adequate data or adequate connectivity to the end users? So that will definitely have an impact and could be one of the challenges that cloud computing adoption could arise. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Kagiso. And João, from your perspective, anything to add to that? But also, we're seeing in the chat, which is great, some people saying that, absolutely there are, there are countries who've adopted, cloud. Where are we seeing data centers? Where are we seeing cloud computing uses? But and also please feel free to contribute to some of the challenges as well.
Yes, for sure. There are lots of other issues that we address in this report that we try to study, to make some measures, but one of them are the concerns about security. Everybody says that somehow cloud systems could not be so secure as having the data centers in our premises. But you see, it's often said that companies, particularly startups and fintechs, are more vulnerable in cyber attacks than the large banks or larger companies because they have more resources to implement their own security services. So that's one of the things that we have also studied. And there is also an interesting report from McKinsey that says that the third reason for the barrier for moving or for migrating to cloud system is really the questions of security. Companies are afraid of losing some kind of privacy security in their data. That's one of the challenges that we have studied in the report. The other one, Kagiso has already mentioned, are the regulatory challenges. Just to add some, there are some regulatory gaps. He mentioned, for instance, in Mozambique, we cannot are allowed, financial companies are not allowed to have their own, to use cloud service providers outside the country. Okay, the law says explicitly that all the data and processing must be done in country. So that's a challenge, for instance, for international companies that are trying to move to Mozambique and to other African countries because they are used to use, let's say, their own data centers based on cloud services. And when they want to come to a new country, there is a barrier they cannot enter so easily. We have several companies that are facing that challenge here, for instance, in Mozambique, in our association, and we are dealing with that. Another constraint is about infrastructure. Kagiso has already mentioned electricity, internet, but also the logistic side, the roads access, the construction, building costs, things like that, are imposing people to, if they want to have their own data centers, they have to invest more in terms of redundancy, in terms of disaster recovery services, because the infrastructure are not so good as they are in other developed countries. And the last one, just to finish this area, I mentioned the skill gaps, because there is a few people in our organization that have skills about new Industry 4.0 infrastructures like AI, machine learning, and so on, and also cloud computing and security of cloud computing. So there are few people in countries with that skills, and the ones that are present are very expensive. So that's another barrier for startups and companies in that area to attract those people for the company. So this is one of the gaps that also we try to address in the report, and we come with some recommendations after. Okay, so.
Thanks, João. And we're seeing many data centers in countries like Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Egypt. I think one of our wonderful attendees, Darmang, also said Uganda and Morocco, Senegal as well. So we're seeing some penetration, which is great, which suggests that there clearly is benefits that cloud computing can offer to a financial service provider or fintech. So Alfred, and then in the spirit of not locking in any vendors, we must say that there are other cloud computing providers out there other than AWS. But AWS has obviously been really crucial in helping us understand the benefits, challenges, and issues. So Alfred, maybe you can tell us, what do you see as some of the significant benefits that cloud computing can bring?
Sure, and I'll try and explain maybe as agnostic as I can, despite my biases. So for the benefits of cloud, whether you are a financial service provider or you're a sole entrepreneur business, for them to really make sense, right, you have to kind of internalize what exactly the cloud is, right? What is a data center in that context? A data center is just a physical location where you house the computing infrastructure you need to be able to run the business. And so you can do this as an individual, as a smaller business. Where the cloud becomes differentiated, right, is where you've got a staggering amount of investment to create an amalgamation of these resources. So a lot of the cloud service providers use the term region, right, which is a geographical location where they've provided cloud services. What a region is inside a region, it'll contain something called an availability zone, which is a clustering of data centers. In AWS's case, an availability zone will have at least 3 data centers. It can have more. And then each of those data centers are 50, 60, 70 kilometers apart. So there's maximum resilience. So the cloud then in a particular region becomes this collection of multiple data centers, right? Tens of them that are designed in such a way that all of that capacity is available to all the customers that use that region. So when you think about it that way, the fact that someone's been able to put down an investment that gives you a pooled resource of these resources, you can dedicate them if you want. It then gives you a few different benefits. And I'll try and mention maybe 5 of them, right? So the first benefit is around agility, right? So because it's on demand, it's pay as you use, and you've essentially got almost infinite capacity in a particular region, you can spin up as many resources as you need. So if your business application goes viral, your customers love it, you don't have to wait a few weeks whilst you ship in more equipment. You just burst out to the cloud, use the available capacity that's there. Similarly, if you're not using something, let's say there's a downturn in your market, you can also save a little bit of costs, right, by switching some of that capacity off that you don't need. The second reason is cost savings. So because it's pay as you use, it kind of shifts away from traditional CapEx models, where you go to the CFO and you beg for a few $1 million to do a project, and then you commit on some return that you're not sure of in 12 months' time. With pay as you use, you kind of go, cool, we'll run an experiment this afternoon. We can switch it off by the evening, reach a conclusion. It then enables experimentation to be cheap. And it also then feeds into some of the bigger goals and objectives we have around financial inclusion, right? So if we can make the underlying infrastructure as cheap to run as possible, then potentially we can pass on those costs and include more people in financial services that we provide. The third benefit is elasticity. So you only provision what you need, scale up and down, like I mentioned, easily. Innovation gets faster as a fourth benefit. And then a fifth benefit that doesn't get mentioned a lot is this idea that you can go global within a few minutes, right? So if you do decide to rapidly expand or service multiple markets, if you've designed your applications accordingly, you can access multiple markets, multiple countries in a matter of minutes and even hours. And so it's that thinking that's fundamentally transforming a lot of financial services organizations, because it gives them, simple wins like, imagine if you could get insight on your deposits, your volume of transactions intraday, instead of waiting overnight for some batch job to run. It suddenly changes the velocity at which you can make decisions. It suddenly changes the velocity at which you can respond to customers. And hopefully that makes you a better business. So that's kind of what it's all about. And regardless of which cloud service provider you use, it's a similar model. You just have to figure out the reasons why you're going to cloud and how you can leverage that level of flexibility in your business.
Sounds like huge amounts of flexibility and benefits. Thank you so much, Alfred. And Rachel, we involved you in this conversation because of time has been incredibly successful. In fact, with the world's fastest standalone digital bank to be profitable. So many congratulations for that project. But we know that cloud was instrumental in enabling you to achieve that. So we'd love to hear from you. What benefits do you think that cloud computing offered time and will offer others?
All right, well, thank you. And thank you for including time in this conversation. So we're a digital banking group. We have about 10 million customers in South Africa, retail customers, and 5 million in the Philippines. And we've launched SME lending across all these markets, plus in Vietnam, going to Indonesia hopefully soon. All of this is because of cloud. So right now we have we have licenses in 2 countries, and we have a headquarters in Singapore where I am, and all of the tech, or most of it, is all run out of Vietnam. Where we have all of our technology hub of 400 people in Ho Chi Minh City. All of this operates because of cloud. So we empower both banks out of Vietnam through the cloud. We are an AWS shop. We are very loyal to them, and they are great for us. I would say the first reason the cloud is important is because it fits the most important need from our customers. Our customers are looking for reliability. They want to know that they can trust the financial institution with their money. That is a core need of our customers and all banks' customers. And doing with cloud, your reliability goes up significantly. So if you are a bank that's running in one country on a data center and that data center fails, which has happened in many countries, you're going to be down for 2 or 3 days. And suddenly people don't have access to their funds. So cloud provides that security and provides that reliability. So let's say that we are operating we're operating in the AWS instance, which is in Dublin, and something happens to that one. Instantaneously, our whole operation flows into AWS in Frankfurt or AWS in Bahrain. So across these ones, we know that we do not have to worry that we're going to be going down because we have a full global operation that's supporting us. The second thing that customers want is they want actually user friendliness, they want innovation, they want to actually be able to understand how to use their money, how to save, how to spend, how to get loans. And that innovation through AI, through machine learning that's coming through is much easier to implement when you're using the cloud and you have a large global partner. If you're just operating data center in one country, you don't have the legal team of expertise that comes by working with a global operation to provide that. The third thing is that people really want efficiency. They want to know that if they're sending money to someone, the money goes and it instantaneously arrives to the receiver. And particularly in emerging markets where we work, people are reliant on these type of operations as they moved away from cash, which is much safer for our customers. And through cloud, we can make all of that happen. So for us as an institution, we would not exist if not for cloud. We will only work in countries in which there is cloud permitted. We actually, when engaging and thinking of moving to Pakistan, we worked with the central bank there to help write their cloud policy. The central banks in South Africa and the Philippines are always willing to talk to other central banks about cloud because they've seen the massive benefits that come from institutions that use the cloud first on security issues, reliability, and all the important things that a central bank is looking for when they entrust a financial institution with a license to safeguard the monies of those customers.
I mean, Rachel, you make a really good point there, and as did, João and Kagiso, about how restrictive it can be to, any financial service provider, small or large, tiny fintech, big digital bank, if cloud is not permitted for whatever reasons. And sometimes it's genuinely about fear of safety, security, not having trust in the country's current service providers. There are good reasons why, but there is ultimately, if we're going to think about, financial inclusion, and we'll move on to talk about those links next, but if we're going to think about financial inclusion, and we know that many African countries in particular have national financial inclusion strategies. We know there is commitment, but actually there is a significant link between cloud computing and its ability to impact on financial inclusion. And before I ask you the question, Rachel, I want to go back to those words. We've heard efficiency, reliability, flexibility, security, affordability. I would say innovative ability. I don't know. I feel
innovation, yes. Yes, yes.
But amazing words there that frankly everybody is looking for from their financial service provider and for their market. So we really need to sort of start being able to change mindsets and fear around cloud and embrace it because of its connection to financial inclusion. So Rachel, maybe you can tell us a little bit more. I'll start the conversation with this. Why does cloud lead to financial inclusion? What did we find in our working group?
All right. Well, first, I think cloud is because of the affordability. Actually using cloud and not having to invest in those significant data centers and being able to do the pay-as-you-go that you heard about, and all of the efficiencies that come with cloud can be passed on to your customer. So Time Bank in South Africa's customer acquisition cost, the CAC, is under $4, which is for a retail bank, is extremely low. We're very proud of that. We're more proud of the fact that actually of our customers in South Africa, a third are social grant recipients. So they live on about $2 or less a day. We're able to bank them sustainably, profitably, and help them on their financial inclusion journey because we're operating through the cloud. 72% of our customers overall are low income, and 76% of the customers we have of the small businesses are very small businesses. So across the board, those customers can be extremely expensive for financial institutions to serve, which is why most of them are not served, and you have massive underserved peoples across Africa and in all emerging markets and some developed markets as well. The cloud can cut through all of this and enable a financial institution to think about how to serve these customers affordably, sustainably, profitably, so that they become part of the core segment of the bank. We don't think of our SASA, our social grant recipients in South Africa, as a CSR. They're a core segment, part of our core strategy, and they helped us become the first digital bank to hit profitability on the African continent.
I mean, that's amazing. The idea, we've been struggling for many, many years about how do we do high volume, low cost transactions that can really genuinely include anybody, no matter what their salary or income is or how unstable that is, being able to include them in formal financial services. And it's been a challenge that's probably many would agree on the call. It's taken too long. We've been talking financial inclusion for far too long. We still have 1.4 billion people unbanked and many, many more who are underbanked, who are not being served well. So it's phenomenal to see how important cloud is in playing a role in achieving that. Kagiso, I know financial inclusion is a huge passion of all of ours on the call, but yours as well. Maybe you can contribute here.
No, Sarah, absolutely. For me, this is, like you said, this is actually personal, right? In a sense that coming from the townships of South Africa and growing up with mainly growing alongside the unbanked and underbanked individuals, what I was like, okay, how do we create or look at an opportunity to make sure that financial services and products are, reachable, right, to the masses of our people in South Africa and also within the continent. And, people can, because of cloud computing, people can easily access financial services and products. I'm talking about, for example, they can buy prepaid data, electricity, water, of which that's something that is available now currently through digital means, and all because of cloud computing. And also they can access financial and legal products and services, even insurance. It's fairly available. Now, I know I'm preaching to the converted here, but because of the cloud computing or cloud availability, fintechs and financial service providers are able to offer digital products and services to the masses of our people. And previously people would get in a taxi, use money to go buy electricity, for example. So because of accessibility of data or products, or like fintech products, for example, in the comfort of their own homes, like there's a product called Mozambique, which actually in South Africa, the masses are using it. Individuals and businesses are able to transact and buy these digital products because of cloud computing at the end of the day. And even from job creation point of view, we find that there are some businesses, the guys selling fruits and vegetables on the street. Now, instead of just selling fruits and vegetables, they can now also start selling digital products that I just mentioned, right? And also even paying for loans with them, or even sending money. I know, there are other products especially in the rest of the continent. I'm not going to mention names, but actually I think we all know the M-Pesas of this world. I know I said it, which is actually, at the end of the day, it's one of the products that, or one of the platforms that enable financial inclusion. But because of the challenges when, I'll give an example, like for example, within the continent, affordability plays a major role. You might have the app, but you might not be able to use it fully because of affordability. And affordability, I'm talking about data affordability, right? Obviously, we want to reach the underserved, but if the data is not affordable, and it's going to be difficult for the masses of our people to use the technology. So, but I think it's Alfred who mentioned that the downstream effects of cloud computing from cost point of view, those savings can be passed on to the individuals that are underserved, and obviously the data part of it plays a major role. And I think in Algeria, like when you look at the continent, Algeria has the most affordable connectivity. I think that you can buy 1 gig of data for about, I think, 48 US cents. But in contrast to that, when you go to, I think the island is Sao Tome and Principe, there, like 1 gig of data, you get it for almost 30 US dollars, and which is vast difference, right? But affordability plays a major role in the usage and adoption of cloud computing, and also the from financial inclusion point of view. If the data is too expensive, then the masses will not be able to afford it, and will obviously withdraw from being financially included. So we see that there is a need by the MNOs and even the regulators to play a role in making sure that data is affordable, and so that we can fast track the financial inclusion initiatives within individuals and also small businesses within the continent. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Kagiso. And I think, the point there also highlights the disparity across Africa. So we've got disparity of the cost of data, we've got disparity of access to cloud and data centers, and we've got disparity about regulation. That is one of the big issues that we're facing as well, because often, a financial service provider, a fintech, will not want to operate in just one country alone. They'll want to scale and work across multiple markets. And that huge disparity across the continent on many things is one of the things that trips us up a lot. So I know in our report, what we wanted to do was not talk just about the challenges, but actually try and call out some recommendations for the industry to actually be able to move things forward. And we created 8 key recommendations, of which we're going to share those with you now. João, I think you're first to share the recommendations that we have suggested in terms of regulation and policy.
Yes, for sure. Actually, there are several recommendations, 8 in total, but concerning about regulatory policy, we figure that there is a need for established policies and regulatory frameworks that protects user, the data, financial stability, but also enabling innovation and usage, because you cannot just regulate and forbidden the innovation, okay, or if it's an obstacle for innovation. Like for instance, the capacity of using the cloud services in the country. So there is a need for implementing comprehensive data protection measures, but also recognizing the cloud computing a role for technology, and include that in the national financial inclusion strategy that all of the countries. And so the connection between the cloud services policies regarding financial inclusion, that's something that must be discussed and putting actions in the plans of the national financial inclusion in each country. Also, the collaboration between all the African institutions like Alliance for Financial Inclusion, African Union, and the Association of African Central Banks to be more closely and to make regulations and policies that can be used regionally or in the level of the country. That's one of the recommendations that we also made in the report. The second one is adopting a risk-based data classification instead of just forbidding the usage of cloud services. That's what most of the countries are using, just saying you cannot use cloud, but they have to move to a policy that is based on risk of data instead of just completely a prohibition of usage of that type of services. Also, promote regional harmonization of policy and regulations. As I mentioned before, we have several companies that are regional or that are international, and that they want to go to countries, and so they are using all the data centers based on cloud. So they cannot go to a country that is not allowed to use cloud. So that's why the regulation, the policy must be done in a regional way, in a regional manner, absorbing all the countries and all the regulators in those countries. That's one of those are the 3 ones that I have to mention right now. I'm sure you can find more deeply conclusions in the report. And best to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, João. So it's clear that our regulators and the groups who sort of overseeing those regulators, there's definitely a role for them. Kagiso, I'm going to come back to you because as a founder of an association, much like João, and also a founder of a fintech too, the industry itself has a role to play in this as well, right? So we can't just say this is just an issue that regulators and policymakers needs to address, although definitely they have a big role to play. But how can the industry support greater usage of cloud computing?
Sarah, I think, and I'm going to talk about FINASA, right? And this is based on the experience that we have from our side. I think it's about awareness within, actually even within the DFA, the Digital Finance and Fintech Associations. It's very important that we create awareness and advocacy for the use of cloud computing. And this is amongst our members as associations, but also within the financial service sector as a whole. And this also includes to the regulators and even government departments, right? And the reason I'm saying this, people always talk about financial literacy. And mine is financial literacy is not only for the end users, but also for the regulators and government. I think awareness as associations, it's very important that we drive and we drive it fully and with and intentional as well. Because obviously there's misconception about what cloud computing is out there. And as we know, fintechs are most of the time are innovators and most of the time ahead of the innovation, call it ecosystem. So it is our responsibility as the associations to, in partnership and collaboration with our members, to train or create a bigger awareness within the digital finance ecosystem and regulation, and also even for government. And I think I strongly believe that using case studies or use cases could be a very good starting point, right? Because obviously, you cannot solve the whole world's problems at once. And but if we say, okay, well, let's use a typical case study, and we start focusing on those collective case studies differently, it could be a very good starting block, Sarah, in building and making sure that everyone understands what cloud computing is, and not only that, but also what are the best and possible ways that we can drive to make sure that its adoption increase. Thanks.
Absolutely, Kagiso. I think it's really, we included some case studies in our report. Time Bank is in there, but there's a few others as well. And we know that Amazon and Microsoft have those case studies on their websites. So go and look at them, everyone. Alfred, maybe you could sort of share that link as well in the chat for anybody who's interested. But they, go read them and make sure that people are aware of them. This is a really exciting time in our lives where technology is growing so rapidly. We can't really think about AI and machine learning and using all that wonderful technology if we don't have the cloud. But skill gaps are huge. Even my own personal skill gaps, before I embarked on this report and this working group, I didn't know everything that I should have known. So João, what recommendations did we make around skills and knowledge?
One of the recommendations that I think that all of us agree, is to involve more the collaboration between private and public sector, and including the university, the academic world. So there is a lack of curricula in terms of the university studies about blockchain, machine learning, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, usage of cloud services, and all the use cases that cloud service can promote. So that's one of the things that we think that must be more putting together, the collaboration between the private sector, our institutions, our associations, and the university, the academy, including also the regulators, for sure. We have to push for more training, more skill, the capacities of the regulators, because that's important for them to have the open mind to put in place new laws and to amend very old laws like the ones for private data that, for instance, in our country, it's more than 20 years old. So that's something that we have to work together, the collaboration between private and public sector.
Absolutely. It's not, it doesn't sit with one particular person alone. Actually, this is a collaboration to change this. And so, João, as you said, data privacy, data sovereignty, which is obviously, data localization, keeping data in the country is something historically many countries have had those regulations and policies around for many years, like 30 years or so in Mozambique. But so we know they're not going to change overnight. We know that actually this is going to take a little while to change. But Alfred, how can we use kind of hybrid cloud models to maybe at least begin to use the cloud and get around some of this?
Yeah, so hybrid cloud is a reality. I think it's actually a necessary reality. We see this across a lot of countries. It addresses a few different use cases. I know regulation is one of them, right? So localizing data will require you to have some sort of local infrastructure. And then you can then leverage the cloud for things that need more capacity, more compute, maybe newer technologies. But there's other good reasons as well, right? In some instances, you get use cases where customers need to run latency sensitive operations, right? Think of things like payments, trading solutions, things that fintech providers provide. And so there's going to be a continuous need to be able to provide those capabilities. Now, cloud is useful in being able to accelerate some of those and give you the best of capabilities. But the infrastructure, my sense is you always need infrastructure on premises to manage some sort of edge use case. And the reasons for that vary. So the challenge for a lot of organizations is trying to figure out the reasons why you want to use the cloud for a particular thing. And it kind of forces everyone across a business, whether you are a CFO, chief risk officer, or you're the IT manager, right? To go down to a level of detail where you have really, really open and robust conversations about what you expect to get out of the cloud. So training and awareness is fantastic because it's giving people a base understanding of what this thing is, how to use it, how to start to experiment. But more importantly, it starts to encourage people to have more nuanced conversations about the types of workloads they want to run in the cloud. And for me, I think that's where the magic is. It's particularly important if I think about our continent across Africa. We have very, very localized problems, right? Rachel mentioned SASSA grant recipients. It's a very, very unique solution to a problem we have in South Africa, and it's servicing a very specific subsegment of people. You might not find the same type of customer in Namibia, in Kenya, in Nigeria. And so we're going to need to have nuanced conversations about the types of problems we want to solve, and therefore, how does cloud do that? Across all the vendors, you'll notice lots of announcements around providing more capabilities at the edge, more hybrid computing. So I think, from a provider perspective, we're trying to meet those needs, and it'll be crucial for people to start to zone in on what they're solving for at that level.
And I think, as Rachel mentioned, actually the relationship that Time has with AWS is a relationship. It's not about just throwing stuff at the cloud and trying to figure it out. Actually, you build a you understand what cloud can do, and if and sort of unpick together that relationship, right? It doesn't need to be something that's done in isolation by the financial service provider.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing I'd encourage, right, is I think one of the things that came through from the report is when we talk about disparate regulations and disparate policies, it also stems from a lack of understanding of what the intention is with this type of technology, as with any type of technology. And so it's important for people to start to think about how you leverage the investments that these large hyperscalers are making across the continent. So you'll get different announcements from cloud vendors, hyperscalers, and their partner networks about the investments they make. And I think there's an opportunity there to take advantage of some of those investments to try and see if you can materially shift the outcomes of a particular community.
Great. So don't worry about it alone. Reach out to whichever cloud computing service provider you would like to work with or can work with in your country, and go on a journey together.
Absolutely.
And Rachel, over to you for our last couple of recommendations. So we talked about making investments as one of the things that we thought was really important. Maybe you can tell us more.
Yeah, so I mean, I think, and if you look at the comments in the chat, it's a lot about the regulators and the relationship with the regulators and the partnership with the regulators. And our experience is that we can talk with the regulators. You can have the cloud. AWS actually engages very much in dialogue and has brought us in new countries to do that. And more importantly, regulators really trust other regulators. So in that way, some of the more, I would say, progressive regulators out there, like in South Africa and the Philippines, are really helpful, and engaging them to take them to talk to regulators, for example, in Ethiopia, which is a very large market, seems in the chat to be challenging on the cloud situation, and have that like bilateral regulator dialogue, I think is one thing that has been important and will continue to be important. This idea of the hybrid, I think, is also a way, like even if you could also engage Indonesia as a hybrid model, and Indonesia is one of the larger emerging markets with a lot of reach, I think is also could play an important role in discussing with other regulators. You know, you don't have to go all the way. You can do the hybrid and start that way, and here's how you do it. So helping to develop that regulator to regulator relationship is super important. I also think, I mean, as regulators, the investment into data centers, into cloud, comes from regulators opening up like the foundation, and then other players coming in and seeing the opportunity there, and recognizing as financial service providers start to engage on the cloud and do more on it, it all becomes a symbiotic relationship. And so I guess my kind of final point on this is that it's not a like time to this and we are one institution. It's a major ecosystem move when you engage with the cloud. It's very important to have all the ecosystem partners to participate in the discussion, similar to what we're doing. I mean, we have the associations here, we have the major umbrella association, we have providers, we have the cloud. You know, all of this is very important to have that discussion going forward, because it like when cloud comes into a country, it can be a huge impact for all players, and having the whole ecosystem engaged to make that happen is very important.
Yeah, it's ecosystems thinking. You're absolutely right. And like you say, we took that approach for our working group, getting different people's opinions, different ideas, seeing what is feasible and what is not, and what can be achieved short term, what will need to be a long-term conversation. But ultimately trying to reach every user on the continent so that they can access financial services that help them grow their resilience, come out of poverty, and be able to improve their lives. And one thing I would love to see that I thought was a great recommendation from our report is we so often see the ability to use things like Facebook, YouTube, and other social media sites for free, provided by network operators. Wouldn't it be wonderful if financial services could be accessed for free, without any data usage? If we can do it for Facebook, I'm sure we could also do it for our the amount of data that and the volume that would be required would actually be a lot less. So I would really love to see the being able to use the digital finance apps, or digital banking, without necessarily even needing to have any data on your wallet itself. Well, I hope you've really, you've all enjoyed. I can see so many conversations in the chat. We've got a couple of minutes left, and maybe if I can just sort of have a quick squiz through the chat to see whether there's any difficulty. So we've seen some conversations around Madagascar having some challenges, Ethiopia having some challenges in the market. I'm sure we would love to help those associations have those conversations with their central bank. So do reach out to us. We're, as I think Rachel's idea is great, getting a central bank like South Africa or Philippines and cloud service provider to speak to the central bank may be really important. I think again as well, their personal, data protection issues. GDPR is obviously a very big policy in Europe, but there's more awareness around that. In fact, our report showed that many countries in Africa still don't have an adequate data protection policy. So that could also be a good place in which to start. If you don't have policies in place to protect data, it can be very difficult to then move on to the cloud. So maybe there's lots of different issues that have come up. Thank you very much to everyone for listening and engaging in the chat. It's one of the most interesting chats I've seen on a webinar for a long time. So thank you for sharing all your views and your ideas there. As we conclude, I'm just going to ask all of our panelists, if you were to sort of champion one thing, or suggest to people to do one thing about cloud computing adoption, what would it be? So Alfred, as the AWS champion and cloud computing champion, let me start with you.
Look, I'm a big fan of this mental model for learning that says you kind of get 10% of your learning from formal training, and you should absolutely do short courses. But you get 20% of the learning from learning with others. And then the bulk of it, 70%, is just from doing. So I think whether you are a person who's fiddling around with an idea in your home, experimenting, or you're a regulator who's trying to get on top of these things, pick a cloud provider, open an account. Almost all of them have free tiers. You can use a lot of these services up to a limit for free for a whole year. Play around with them, get your hands dirty, and then start to build your own understanding of what this thing is and how useful it can be. And then you make up your own mind. So I would definitely encourage people to just get stuck in. Just pick a problem, anything, a movie night recommender, something that recommends recipes. Go build it, play around with it, build it on the cloud, and see what happens.
I love that idea. It takes the fear away, that first step, into the unknown. Kagiso?
For me, Sarah, actually, it's quite a simple one. It's regarding policies and regulation frameworks within in-country. So spending some quality time with the regulators and the decision makers or policymakers, I think it's important. Financial literacy, again, I'm going to say, is not only for the end users, but those that make the regulations. So we need to spend some quality time to help our regulators and policymakers understand these new innovations and technologies. Yeah, that's it from my side.
I love that. I really took from this report of how important the connection between cloud and financial inclusion is, and that many people don't understand that. My whole world shifted once I started to understand what it actually could mean. So great point there, Kagiso. João, coming to you.
Well, I pick up the skill team, let's say, and I like to see our organizations, our associations around the world, to be more involved with young people, with university, giving access to services, trying to new services, trying the innovation. So that's what I expect to see in the future, using the service like Alfred says, but involving the university, involving the academia, involving the young people. I can give an example. A few weeks ago, I came across with 4 students that are between 20 and 21 years old here in Mozambique, and they are starting the launch of the first digital currency in Mozambique. So those guys are 20 years old, and they don't use cloud computer because they don't know how to use it. They are using blockchain and all the servers in the personal computer. So we are giving them the opportunity to use our infrastructure in terms of our companies, in terms of our association. So be together and involved with local students, because they have lots of things to show. They have lots of things to explore in the future.
Excellent. Build that talent pipeline and future entrepreneurs. Love it.
Yeah, that's it.
But
they don't know how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Bringing everyone's skills together, right? But everyone has different things to bring to the table, bringing them all together. And finally, Rachel.
Yeah, I mean, I'm listening to, the talk about financial literacy. I think that's very important. I mean, but that's one piece, and I think you're seeing greater financial, like, as innovation takes place, you're seeing greater impact around. I also think, like, there is a sense that if countries see what other countries are doing or see progress happening, that can be a highly motivating factor when looking at like the comments in the chat about Zimbabwe. And, when you look at the opportunity there and see, looking to their neighbors about this, I do think that there's lots of opportunity here, and that those countries can move, like, cloud computing will happen in all countries. It's just a matter of when and time and who's going to be able to move further faster because of this, and then supporting those other markets so that we can get them on board and move them together.
Absolutely. We all 100% believe in the cloud computing revolution. We've seen the impact that it can make. We don't want any market to be left behind. So if you're struggling in your market and you would love some help, some support, just time to discuss, please do reach out to us. All of us will be very happy to support you. And please help us champion those 8 recommendations. We really believe that the 8 recommendations that we've shared with you about working with regulators, skills, infrastructure changes, investments, will really be key to make this work for everybody going forward. We don't want any country, any market, any individual left behind. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening in. I hope you've enjoyed. I've seen a few comments about people really enjoying the conversation, so I'm really glad. Thank you all for staying on for the hour. Do go and read the report, and we hope to see you on further webinars or work with you on cloud computing going forwards. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a wonderful day.